Hello, everybody. Welcome. This is Carl's Roller Coaster Podcast. Hello, everybody. How's everyone doing? I hope you're all feeling beautiful, feeling great, that life is treating you all super duper well. Today I have Hayo Boeft, this great guy that I met last year during an European tour I was doing. He is a senior production manager and extremely experienced music professional, guy that has played in bands, worked as a sound guy and toured the world. Worked for Mojo Concerts, which is Live Nation Holland, for almost 10 years as a artist, rep and production manager. Countless tours, touring System of a Down, Within Temptation, Muse Stadium Tour. The guy has been around, and he comes from very troubling beginnings with a troubled family, and he had to find his way into this world. So it's a proof that people can strive through difficult times, through difficulty, even if that's when on your formation years, basically. It's a very inspirational conversation. Talked about early stages of his life and all the way up till nowadays, touring with Muse, like I just mentioned, Metallica, and being a runner, and eventually becoming a running coach. So, with you all, my friend Hayo Boeft. Enjoy. All right. Hello, Hayo. How are you, my friend?
I'm good, Carl. How are you?
I'm very well. It's been a while good. since we last talked, hasn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Last November, well, we've been exchanging messages and things like that, but we met during last year's Within Temptation European tour. We worked closely to each other, and then just basically checking your career profile. It says System of a Down Tour 2017, and we did a couple of shows with System of a Down on that particular tour. But we definitely got more involved when we did an entire European tour last year. So it's a pleasure to have you on the roller coaster. Thanks for giving us the time.
It's my pleasure.
Hayo, I'm quite interested in knowing, because obviously we working on the this very tough industry, which is the musical industry, and an ever changing industry, continually changing drastically from day to day. If you could tell me how was your upbringing in Holland? Where did you grow up, and how did you eventually started playing in bands? Because you're a musician as well, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I started early. My early upbringing was. I recall it as being quite easy, but effectively I am from a broken family. My father was a minister, and I think our family, I'm the youngest, there's 3 older sisters, but it started falling apart when I was about 8 or 9 years old. Constant fights, etc. I think there was a point that my parents should have separated, and they didn't decide until much later. They eventually separated when I was 15. So, but by that time there wasn't much of a comfortable home situation anymore. So I as much as my sisters were used to seeking that elsewhere. So it's in a nutshell. But that brought me to, I think, part that that's partial. That partially brought me to start playing in bands. I started learning guitar, getting guitar lessons. I think when I was 11 or 12. At some point, I remember that memory might be wrong, but it's a good story anyway. My guitar teacher at some point told me, not directly, I think, but that it wasn't, I wasn't going to be the greatest guitar player ever. So I decided to pick up the bass because I figured that would be easier. It's only 4 strings instead of 6, and then most bass players I saw playing would only touch 1 string at a time also. And so that's how I wound up. One of my friends wanted to start a band, and obviously 1980, 1981, punk rock band. We just started a punk band, and it all went from there. Pretty much all went from there.
Amazing. And then obviously at this time you were attending school, I presume.
Yes, that was the tricky combination because we were. I think I did my first gig with that band when I was still 14, so I was still going to school, which is a weird combination because school being quite a conformist environment, and we were playing this punk band and being against everything, and I was hanging with friends in squads everywhere, etc. So it was. It was, and all through my whole school career, that has been weird and confusing somewhat, because I tried to, especially in the beginning, I tried to still be a decent student, but on the other hand, I didn't really fit in that system either.
Mm-hmm. And at how old were you when your parents split it up?
When they finally decided, when they finally realized that there was no point left at all to stay together, I was 15, maybe I was just 16. And so my father moved out. We had this big house. I grew up in Leiden, which is one of the university cities in Holland on the west coast. And so my father moved out, and from the moment he moved out, I haven't seen him much anymore since he died a year later. He died when I was 17, all of a sudden, and it was, for me, it was at the point that I was prepared to getting back in contact with him again, because when he moved out, I decided, okay, it's as much as as it's a reasonable decision when you're 16, but it was a decision, or it worked out like that we just didn't talk. And at some point, I decided that I wanted to have some talks with him. I wanted to share some information and maybe maintain some sort of healthy father-son relationship. And that's when he died. So I was a bit too late on that, or rather, he was too early.
Mm. And well, for a 16, 17-year-old, this all sounds extremely complicated to deal internally, and I obviously can't relate to it at all, because I didn't have an experience similar to that. But how did you deal with it at a time, internally and psychologically? And did those events, obviously there must have been an impact on your life, a massive impact on your life, but how did you respond to it? What was your response? Because some people tend to, depending on the kind of support they have or the kind of support that they don't have, they tend to go down not very good routes on their lives, but somehow you doesn't seem to be that case. So how did you deal with it at the time, and how did you manage to carry on and eventually finish school and move on from playing in bands to eventually becoming a sound guy and getting into, well, eventually the future work that you did?
Well, already when my parents were still together and we had some sort of a family life, albeit it was all, it was all broken up and fucked up. And I decided at some point in one of the darker days, so to speak, when there were big arguments, that whatever would happen, it would just not bring me down. I was pretty adamant on surviving, and I kept that up. Although after my father died, when he died, or one of the reasons that our family fell apart was because he was an alcoholic. And I don't think he directly died from drinking, but he had heart failure at the age 58, which in a way is disturbing for me now, because I'm getting near that age, and so it's something that's sometimes on my mind, not too often though. But at that time, I just continued living. I think I was confused. I just didn't really know. I didn't really know what to feel, what to think. At some point, I started drinking also, more than was good for me. I quit school, and I think my mother wasn't much of a, she was very supportive in a lot of ways, but she didn't throw in a lot of counterweight when I decided myself that I was quitting school. Maybe she realized that it would be useless anyway. I don't know. I never really figured out how she thought about that period, which was really hard on her, obviously also. But yeah, it was the drinking, it was playing in bands, it was hanging. I mean, I was pretty much hanging with friends all the time, and then in the meantime, every now and then I would go to school. I would do gigs in the weekends, or just go to parties or whatever, and that was it. That was just the stream of life that was going on. The interesting thing is, from being a kid, I always did sports. I did, I did judo. I did athletics. At some point, I started playing basketball, and the weird thing is, I was even pretty good at it. And when I was turning 18, or I was going to, let's say that the highest junior level, there was a coach that wanted to, apparently he saw more in me. He saw more talent than I did myself. But consequently, I had to make the choice between the life I was living with playing in bands, etc., or being in a higher sports team where I would have to be training 3 or 4 times a week and have a game every weekend. And that's pretty much where I quit that. And I stopped doing any kind of sports or physical exercise for a lot of years.
So back then you were not, because you were a runner as well. And have you back then, were you running already, or did running enter your life on a later stage of your life?
The running as I do it now entered much later, much later.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah.
We will definitely talk more about that then later on.
Yeah.
So are you with all of this confusion, very complicated period happening for any teenager, and on this particular case, you yourself, did your family, or are you a spiritual guy? Do you have or had any beliefs? Were you like somehow, I don't know, trying as well, like you said, you're just like navigating through those emotions and trying to find your place in the world, as any 15-16-year-old would do, but then with a lot of more pressure than the usual, I would say. Did you have, or do you have, any kind of like higher connection? Do you believe on spirituality or religion or anything like that?
Well, there's all sorts. No, 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 there's all sorts of rabbits jumping out of the hat, because circling back to my father was a minister in the Dutch Reformed Church. So I inherited some of that, because when I was younger, when I was like 9 or 10 years old, I used to go with him to church when he would preach. So I would join him for that I guess every couple of weeks. I've seen him preach many times, and as much as I have, I've never been. I never considered myself, not even when I was a kid, as I never really believed in God in the, let's say, in the Christian sense. I think when I was around 17, when all this happened, when I was 17, 18, I just, I pretty much didn't know what to think, or what to feel, or what to believe. I ran away from a lot of things in some way. So, I just drowned myself in doing the stuff I liked and the stuff I enjoyed. Meanwhile, I would still, there would still be, I think there was, I had always some sense of support. I don't know where from, but something helped me to stay on my feet.
Mm-hmm. Do you have nowadays any sort of spiritual practice? Do you anything that you would in your own terms say that's kind of like some sort of higher power that you believe, something that you kind of try and be connected with?
Yeah, I guess there is, but it's on a on a very abstract level. I find it for instance, I find it in the running. I think this is something you will be able to relate to, but the actual running does give you strength, and and I don't mean physical. I mean mental and even emotional strength. Going on long runs gives me the opportunity to not only think about things that needs to be thought over. I never go out running with an idea that I have to think about something and that the running will help me. It's more that going out there opens up, or may open up. It doesn't always happen. It may open up a stream of thoughts, of consciousness that's worthwhile, or that's far enough under or up on the surface to be addressed. And sometimes stuff comes up that's way deeper. And on the other hand, I do think that the elders or the ancestors or whoever ever roamed the world are still around in a certain way. I mean, I'm not big on reincarnation or whatever, but I can't get my head around. I can't really reconcile myself the idea that life at some point ends and really ends.
Mm-hmm.
So, as I say, it's reincarnation is on a really abstract, on a really spiritual level,
Mm-hmm.
is something that maybe that is likely happening, and what the spirits, or what as I say, the elders do with it, or their position in it is likely much more subtle, or much more in the background, so to speak, than you would think, or sometimes even you would hope.
Yeah, I it's such a complicated subject, this one of reincarnation and spirituality,
Yeah.
because if we think rationally about things, and just take science and biology, for instance,
Mm-hmm.
it's not easy, but it's quite it's a way of understanding, well, where did we come from and how we evolved, because we literally just evolved from one cell to another cell to become things, and eventually Homo sapiens, and eventually
Yeah.
have the society that we have nowadays. But then that's one way of seeing things. But when you talk about your own self and this constant voice that we have in our minds, when you talk and discuss about the ego, and and the frustrations and the successes that we have in life, and how those things play out in our character, in how we conduct our lives,
Mm-hmm.
be that as on the professional side of things, or on the personal side of things. It's when the feelings that you have, experiences even so, like that people do have, and I most certainly can attest that I've had countless experiences on my life that put everything into question, and
Yeah.
made me question. And I think it's important to obviously always question everything, especially living in the world
Yes.
that we live, and how we've been brought up, because we are brought up in a family, in whatever situation that might be,
Mm-hmm.
and we don't question things. All of a sudden, you just go into school, you go to university, you get a job, and you raise a family, you meet a person, you get married, you have
Yeah.
kids,
Yeah.
and that's just what everybody does. But then, what is right and what's wrong, and
Yeah.
why is right and why is wrong,
Yeah.
and where did things become things, when did things become things, when did we start, how the value that we give to things, how we perceive things, how we see things. It's so complicated. When you put all of that on
Mm-hmm.
the table,
Yeah.
it's inevitable to just start considering other things,
Yeah.
and I most certainly do consider a hell of a lot of other things than just what my eyes can see and my ears can hear.
Mhm. Oh yeah, yeah.
But you gently tapped into the effects of running, and
Mm.
I absolutely agree with you. For me, running is just like today. I went for like. I think that when you're actually training really hard, it's actually very, very difficult to actually think about anything else, which is good as well, because you're
Mm-hmm.
so present on the moment, that your brain it's refreshing for the brain, because your brain is not thinking about the future, is not thinking about the past, but literally just focusing on your form and on
Yeah.
that pace that you are at the moment. But sometimes you go for just a jog, which is literally
Yeah.
what I did today, and on those easy runs, you do get the time to think things through, and it's
Yeah.
so liberating, and it makes you feel so much better in the end, because it's kind of like self therapy in a way, isn't it?
It is. It's exactly as you say. It's the relaxed runs. It's where you don't, or where the, let's say, where your body, if on the hard training moments, when your body needs so much energy to do the actual exercise, that it's that your brain and even some of your body functions are being tapped out. But on the slower runs, on the more relaxed runs, it's that's way different. It's and then the mind opens up. And
When did you start running, Hayo?
it's not that long ago, actually. I was thinking about that the other day, and I think I started running in 2000. I first started running in 2007 or 2008, and it pretty much started with just go running. I was when, as I said, when I quit playing basketball, I pretty much quit doing any sports. I think I remember a short run going to the gym in my mid-20s, and after that, it came down to the point where actually my wife started to go to the gym again to take spinning classes. Well, I must say in the beginning I found the idea to go on what I would call a home trainer in a gym to go cycling a bit ludicrous, but at some point I joined her and I was addicted after 2 times. So we did spinning together and separate from each other, but we did spinning for a while, and then at some point I was like, no, I want to go outside and I want to do something which I can do anywhere at any given time and without needing anything. So I got myself a pair of shoes and I started running. And the first time I went out, literally, this is not a story I'm making up. Literally, the first time I went out running, I went for like a 5K run. An untrained 5K run. It may even been 6 or something. So I came back, and of course I had sore muscles. I could barely walk for 3 days, and that was it. I've been. I think pretty soon after that, I started picking it up, and I got injured pretty soon. So then I stopped again, and I picked it up about a year later, and ever since I've been running.
That's great. I mean, it's really
about 10 years.
10 years. It's I mean, I myself, I mean, I always exercised my entire life, and running was always part of it. But I think running wasn't exactly what I was doing. I was pretty much just a jogger, that guy that goes and do 20 minutes, 25, half an hour, 3, maybe on a good week, 4 times a week. But jogging was always something that was within me. I always really enjoyed it. But then a few years ago, I started a running club here in London, the Michaela Running Club, and then I just, it really entered my life and filled a gap that I had on my life at the time, and I just fell in love with it. And the more you do it, and the more consistent you are, you see the results. And I think that in life in general is just like that, isn't it? Where the more attention and the more energy you put into anything, you start seeing results. And when you start seeing results, it's very empowering. Yeah. It's very empowering.
Yeah, it's true. It's it gives back what you put into it, and especially with something so basic as running, or as going out there and move. It's as you say, it's empowering. It's always you see the interesting thing is you see the reverse side when you get injured, or when you, like I now with all the touring I've been doing recently, I haven't been doing a lot of running, so my form is about at the lowest where it has been in the last 5 or 6 years. So I've got to pick it up again, which is easier than you sometimes think, because it'll take me a couple runs just to get get back to my basic level and take it from there. So my speed is awful at the moment, but I'm not too worried about it. That'll come back. And even with I'm getting to the point where with the climbing of the years, I'm not going to be any faster anymore. Well, maybe some on the longer distances, but maintaining form and actually getting to a form that's satisfactory is good enough in that.
Hayo, tell me a little bit, little slight change of subject now, going from running back to music again, which is obviously the main thing on your life. The main professional thing on your life, I mean. How did you enter the business in regards of being a sound guy and working as a sound guy? And so were you self-taught when it comes to sound engineering, and eventually started doing lots of international touring? How those jobs came your way? How, if you can remember more or less, how those dots connected back then?
Well, it's that has been what I've been doing most of my life. I've never really followed a career path of any sort. As you can see, I didn't even finish school, so there wasn't much of a career person in me, and part of that may have to do may have been caused by being from at some point just being from an unprotected environment, so to speak. But I have always been able to tap into whatever came on my way in a more or less decent way. Although looking back, my motives weren't always that positive. Sometimes a choice is not a choice, but sometimes a choice is actually not making a choice at all and going with the consequences of not making a choice. With becoming a sound engineer, it was a bit of both. I was playing in bands, and it was all, as they would call it now, indie music, a bit of punk rock, bit of noise style kind of thing. And then I was in a band that we played with we did quite a bit of gigs, and every now and then we would run into this sound guy that had his own sort of homemade PA, and he would do sound, and he was enthusiastic and everything. So I figured that actually that side, doing sound, that appealed to me more than playing bass in a band. There's no why. It just appealed to me. And so I started working with him and working for him, and that were my first steps as a sound guy. And then later on, a couple of years later, my older sister worked at this big sound company in Holland, and through her I got some gigs with that company, and that's how where it just rolled further. I became a guy that went on the road, loading trucks, etc., pushing boxes, and eventually getting behind board also. And that's the rest is history. Well, there's a bit more to it, but that's how it started.
How did you navigate it from being a sound engineer to project management and to be a production manager, and what are the main differences that you see? So 2 points here. How did you navigate from being on the road and pushing, being a loader pretty much, and then a sound guy eventually, to production manager, and what are the main differences that you see between the production manager job and the tour manager job?
That's a lot of questions. Let me go back first, because
I'm sorry, I overloaded you.
No, that's okay. But let me go back first to put it in, to connect some dots and put some things in perspective. When I started doing sound, one of the underlying themes was that I didn't consider myself good enough a musician to try and perceive a career as a musician. It wasn't into that scene either. I mean, I wasn't into a scene where you would make money with music anyway. But it was a combination of. Somehow it didn't really cross my mind. But when it did cross my mind, I didn't have the confidence to go to, because it came up. The question came up at some point. But I didn't consider myself good enough as a musician to try and go for it. But I did consider myself a decent enough, at that point, a decent enough sound guy to, and I already discovered that I was good enough to make some money of it. So fast forward to the switch it wasn't really a switch, it was more of a soft development from being a sound guy behind the board and to the guy that would just manage the whole, manage a festival or whatever. Again, there was a point where I liked the game better than the tools. So the dealing with people was more my thing than actually tweaking some knobs. Also, there at the same point there was this same underlying theme that I saw these guys around me that I thought were much better sound guys than I was. Later on, I learned that people around me value me higher than I would value myself. But that was part of it. The other part was that I actually liked the whole organizational part, the managing part, dealing with the whole structure of everything. I really did enjoy that. I enjoyed managing people more than managing speakers, so to speak. So that's and the other thing is, and that's the other theme that we discussed a little earlier. I saw the opportunity because in the mid '90s or the late '90s, I had the experience of touring with bands already. I stopped touring with bands because we got kids and I wanted to be home with my kids. So the international touring was pretty much done by 1996, and then at the same time, the position of having some or for that sound company doing gigs that were so big that you would need somebody that would just oversee the whole operation rather than also be either at the board or on a stage or hanging speakers or something, became much more relevant. And there weren't that many people that wanted or had the ambition or were willing to pick up that job. So besides the two other things about me seeing better sound engineers around me and really liking bossing around people rather than bossing around equipment, added to that became the observation that the opportunity was actually there, and that there was a demand for it. So that pretty much added up for me. And so I just started managing sound packages. I would be responsible for a festival like Pink Pop and all the logistics and technical the planning of people just for the sound company for that festival. So I pretty much became a project manager. I would show up behind the board every now and then because there would be gigs where somebody else would be the project manager and they would still book me in as a sound guy. That always has happened until I quit that company.
What was the name of the company?
It's called Emco. These days it's called Emco Flashlight because they merged with a lighting company called Flashlight. Right now it's in Holland. It's the biggest rental company for sound and lights.
Mm-hmm. And this job that you were doing for them at the time, was it? How was did you have a contract with them? Was it like a 0-hour kind of contract? Would they keep you booking for jobs constantly, or was it? Or were you kind of like I said, with a contract with them, and then they would just keep shifting you around as demand would take place?
Well, I started working for them in 1991, and back then it was as a freelancer, and I worked for them as a freelancer pretty much up to 96, and then they at that they were either hiring people as freelancer or putting them indeed on a 0-hour contract. And I think in 96 or 97, it must have been 97 that they gave me a contract. So they just put me on the payroll for the regular, because it would be it's at law it would be a 40-hour-a-week job, which obviously in this industry is never a 40-hour-a-week job, because it's either an 80-hour-a-week job or it's a 5-hour-a-week job in the slow periods. But on average, over a year, for over a lot of years, I've done like, on average, a year, I would go for 45, maybe 50 hours a week.
Wow.
Depending but that would concentrate on specific periods in the year that were really busy, and have some periods in the year that were really slow. But I would still get up there to a little over 40 hours per week if I look back.
Mm-hmm.
And that was fine. They gave me a contract. It was decent enough.
Mm-hmm.
It was a decent enough salary, and I had the opportunity, and at some point also the freedom to do what I wanted. In a way, I got to pick my own work,
Mm-hmm.
because the whole it was just by the nature that company was managed at the time. By now it's much more bigger, it's much more formal. They have these planners, etc., etc. So it's much more multi-layered, so to speak, in the organization. Back then it was a bit more rough. So I mean, I would officially I could not plan my own people, because there would still be a personnel planner, but I would always build my own teams.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then I would be responsible for the material, etc., and then plan transport and all crap like that. Do all the timings with whoever would hire us with the festival, or if it could be a corporate job or whatever, or a TV show.
Mm-hmm.
I did a lot of work in let's say in live TV business also, which
Mm-hmm.
is way different again. Everybody's nervous when you do live TV. It's ridiculous. Yeah, we do live shows every day, and every show is a deadline. Actually, every band, putting any band on stage in time is a deadline.
Yeah, exactly.
Once you put a camera in, everybody stresses out.
That's so true. Yeah, it happens.
So,
It happens.
But that was always a nice observation. But it started from there, and after that, there was a point where literally my thought was, okay, I'm now trading apples, or I'm trading bananas, or whatever you want to call it. But I wouldn't mind being responsible for the whole grocery store.
Mm-hmm.
And and I knew that there weren't that many places in Holland where those where you could run that store. And while I was in the process of looking around to see if there was a place where I thought I would fit, and where I could run the store, Mojo Concerts, which is essentially Live Nation Holland, called if I would be interested to apply for a job, which in my case would be the job of production manager, and that was exactly the job I was looking for. That was pretty spot on. So again, I could jump. It was partially self-created, because funnily enough, later on I heard the story why they wanted me, and that had to do with my job as a project manager, sound engineer for Amco, so they asked me to apply. Well, if a company asks you to apply, you're in. I mean, there's a fair chance that they're actually going to hire you, and that happened. That was 2009, and they hired me, and I've been a production manager, or promoter rep, as they sometimes call it, also for them for 9 years.
Amazing. Are you still with Mojo nowadays, with Live Nation?
No, I quit.
Oh.
I quit Live Nation last year, October.
Mm-hmm.
Right, pretty much a month or two, or a month and a half before we met, because I'd been being a promo rep for 9 years. For me, it was long enough. I knew I knew the trick, and I've met a lot of people in the industry. And at some point, again, my kids grew up, and my kids moved out. When we met the first time, without being really aware of each other in 2017 on System of a Down, I got on that tour because I wanted to start touring again. I hadn't been touring at that point since '96, so for 20 years. And along came that opportunity again to pick up half a tour with System of a Down. That gave me the chance to see if, with my big mouth saying, "Yeah, I want to go out on the road again," blah blah blah. That was a good test case. Going on the tour with a majority American crew, with a good rock band, doing festivals and doing arena shows, gives you a pretty good impression if that would be the life that you want to live, if you would decide so. Mm-hmm. And I liked it. So that took another year to. It was an on-off though, because it's not that when you've been a promo rep for 9 years that everybody on the road's going to hire you as a touring production manager all of a sudden. But it gave me enough conviction that was the way I wanted to go, that I considered quitting Mojo, mm-hmm. which is a hard one, because it's a really, really, really good company to work for.
Yeah, let me just ask quickly, how you said that they offered the job of production manager, but actually during those years you're working as a promo rep in the company. And just for people that are listening that doesn't know what a promo rep does for a company, if you could just briefly explain a little bit of what did the job consist of.
Yes. Well, as a promo rep or a promoter rep, it's you're representing the local promoter on a gig a band plays. So what happens is a band got booked, say, in the O2 Arena in London or whatever, in the Ziggo Dome in Amsterdam, and the local promoter is actually the party that books that band. There's all kinds of business constructions which we won't get into now, but the local promoter books the band. He rents the venue, he books the band, the date is set, there's a budget, there's a ticket price, etc., etc. And then you need a guy or a girl, you need a person that takes care of everything that needs to be done to make the show happen. That ranges from drawing, making on-sale drawings for the ticketing department. That's where it pretty much starts, all the way down to making sure they have towels in the dressing rooms on the day of show. In some markets, there's more people, or there's some of these jobs are separated. In our market, or in the Western European routine, you get a promoter rep that takes care of all those things. So the band sends the rider, and the promoter rep goes by the rider to see what they all need, what they're bringing, what he needs to hire, what he needs to take care of in terms of parking, maybe. How many trucks are they bringing? How many buses? Where are they going to park? When are they going to show up? Do we need to hire catering for them or not? Do they bring their own catering and we just have to supply a kitchen? Down to establishing show times, etc., etc., and making sure the show happens. That's what the promoter rep does. And sometimes some of those responsibilities are beyond him, but again, in our market, the promoter rep does have the decision-making responsibilities on the day or the days of the show himself.
And does the promo rep is always local, or does certain types of tour, big tours, carry on one single promo rep with them?
Well, they may, if a band does, say, for Holland, of course, is a very small market. So a band playing arena shows in Holland will not play multiple venues, because it doesn't make sense to play a show in Amsterdam and then the next night a show in Rotterdam, because they're only 45 minutes apart. But if that same band would go to the UK, they may play London, they may play Manchester, they may play some more gigs, and they may have the same promoter rep for all those gigs.
Mm-hmm.
So he would still be the guy between, because the promoter rep is you can see him like some sort of a middleman also between the band and the venue and some supplier parties.
Mm-hmm.
So he may be taking care of multiple gigs in multiple venues, but still in one country.
Yeah,
I haven't seen. I guess it happens. Yeah, it does happen in Eastern Europe, where you would have a promoter rep taking care of a gig in Bulgaria and in Macedonia and in Romania, simply because the way the market is structured. Mm-hmm. And that market is so big in surface and so small in amount of venues and amount of revenues that it takes one promoter rep. It's not actually. Yeah, it is true in a way, because that promoter rep taking care of those gigs will take care of because it will be sent out by Live Nation Eastern Europe, where I in Holland would be sent out by Live Nation Holland. Right. However, him coming from it's an actual example. It's an actual true story. Him being based in Budapest, even if he takes care of a gig in Sofia, he would still be depending on locals for all his rental. You know, being from Budapest and having to rent forklifts in Sofia, he would not do that himself. He would have a local. He would still have like a local promo rep.
Mm-hmm. So back in 2017, when you did the System of a Down tour, did you have to take time off from Mojo, or how did that work out? Because it was a separate job from the one that you're doing at Live Nation, right?
Yeah. Well, being a promoter rep or a production manager on the road is I tend to say that it's the same kind of job, but you're on different sides of the rider. Either you're on the sending end or on the receiving end, but of course there's a bit more nuance to that, but it sums it up. I had to take time off. I was pretty open with. I've always been pretty open with Mojo about my ambitions. That's also what they encourage. And we've been looking at the time into if there would be ways for me to combine different roles. But at least they were supportive in me doing that. It was only like a 4-week or 3 to 4 week stint with System, and they were supportive in letting me go those couple of weeks.
Right.
It worked out well. Also, there weren't, it wasn't interfering with any jobs they really wanted me to pick up over the summer. Mm-hmm. And so it wasn't that much of a discussion. It was a bit of a financial discussion, but that's another story. But I had to. Yeah, it was. I wasn't going out as a Mojo person. I wasn't going out as an independent guy at the time.
It's quite difficult, isn't it? Because I can only imagine working for such a big company, and like you said, a great company and great working environment as Mojo Live Nation Holland. It going back to being an independent production manager, which is basically how we start. We always start independently, isn't it? I mean, there's no way of applying for a tour manager job on Bon Jovi or a tour manager job on System of a Down. It's word of mouth, is who you know and the people that you know. And I'll tell you, this guy you know. So going from that safety net of having that paycheck on monthly basis and working, like you said, for a great company, to becoming an independent production manager again. How was that switch for you? Did you have like a very good idea that you would eventually be getting jobs coming your way, or was it just a leap of faith?
Well, I was confident that I would get jobs, and my moment of quitting Mojo was well thought of, because I was literally doing my last show for Mojo on one day, and getting on the plane to get on my first tour, which was the Within Temptation fall tour in 2018, the next day.
Mm-hmm.
That it was pretty much going overnight from one into the other. And that Within Temptation tour got me going, but obviously I still had the notion that if I wouldn't pick up a lot of work after that it could also become difficult. So, well, the Within Temptation job happened. I did some stuff in Holland in the early fall of this year, and then I did another Within Temptation US tour in March. And then Chuck Beckler, who was the designated sideco or main sideco on Muse, called me if I would be the other sideco on Muse over the summer. So that was the next big thing, and that was pretty much the opportunity that I needed. And so I've been with Muse for 10 weeks over the summer.
That's amazing. And as a stadium tour site coordinator, what are the main things that you are overseeing on this particular role?
Well, you're over, as the job description says, you're the site coordinator. There's a site coordinator in a lot of fields of profession, and what connects them is that they make sure that the site where something is about to happen is prepared for that specific thing to happen. I mean, I know that, for instance, Medics Without Frontiers, they have site coordinators that go ahead of the rescue or of a rescue team to make sure that they can actually land, and they can bring in their containers, and that they can build their emergency hospitals or whatever. That may be a stressful and a very short-term job. In our world, it's a bit easier. You know how much time you have, and what we do is we prepare the site, and that means we build the basic stage structure for the production to come in with sound, lights, video, whatever crap they want to put in there. To go up. So we built the basic stage structure. It may be a roofed stage. It may be just a tower construction. And besides that, we make sure that the dressing room situation is sorted, whether it be if it's a green field, something with containers, or if it's in a stadium, that there's some sort of a designation to the rooms made. If there may be some plumbing involved, there's always power involved, which need to be run from one side to the other, or being prepared that the power that's touring with production can be run in the proper ways. So it's all, in a way, it's some sort of housekeeping, and then the technical part is building that stage structure.
And who are you liaising with at the time? Are you dealing with the production manager? And is the production manager the first person who comes in and check if all of those things in regards of the site are in accordance with riders and whatever else they might have sent prior to the specific show?
Yeah, well, the site coordinator is supposed to know what the production needs to find when they arrive. And indeed, the production manager is the first person on site that checks on those things.
Mm-hmm.
So a rider for a stadium tour is basically a two-tier rocket, so to speak. It's the checklist from the sideco, which consists all stuff that the site needs to adhere to. down to crane calls, cranes, specification for cranes, forklifts, and other planned golf carts for people to move around when it's ready. And then the second part is the rider, is the production rider, which consists labor calls, runner calls, maybe some specifics around dressing rooms and stuff like that. Some of that stuff is being covered by the Sideco already. Some of that is separate from both, because it's the catering rider which is being sent out by the caterer, which essentially is part of production. So the Sideco does the basic stuff, and then the production comes in and fills in or connects the dots to make sure the production happens. I mean, as a Sideco, for example, something you never have to deal with is something like show times. Or I don't deal with crowd management or with barricade or whatever. On some tours you would, because it's local barricade, and you would oversee that it's there. But apart from that, it's the tour itself that deals with the fact that, or deals with where the barricades are actually going to go. So as a Sideco, it's limited, but it's limited very. It's very clear what you have to take care of or not.
Were you doing site coordination on those last few dates that you did with Metallica in Europe as well? Was that what you were doing with them?
No, on Metallica I was supporting the local promoter, so I was working for the local promoter. They brought me in as a head of production. It was more of a mentoring position, advising, making sure stuff would actually happening, which had to do with the fact it was basically based on experience and knowledge, picking up that job and advising the local production manager and the local promo reps on what they would need to do to make that show happen.
This, what would you point out as the main differences between tour management and production management?
The tour manager takes care of the band, and the production manager takes care of the production. So the tour manager does all stuff that's band related, which may involve flights, transportation, buses, all kinds of stuff around the band, timings, promo stuff. Whereas the production manager, he makes sure that the band can come in and actually perform on the stage as they like to do every night. So as a production manager, I wouldn't say you don't have to deal with the band at all, because, for instance, within Temptation, I deal with the band a lot. There's very short lines, but then again, within Temptation is not a huge band. It's not small, but it's not Muse or it's not Bon Jovi or whatever. Whereas as a production manager for a band like that, you deal with the band much less. You may deal with them because you're part of the show, or you have a role in their show, and you may show them on or off stage, but real personal contact with the band on that level as a production manager maybe very little. But it's pretty much it's different from one band and one situation to the other. But the main thing is that the tour manager doesn't deal with the trucks. The production manager doesn't deal with interviews. Although in some situations he may, but in general he doesn't. The production manager makes sure the trucks show up on time, and he makes sure that there's local crew hired, because that's what he ordered from the local promoter. And he makes sure that the stage is built in time, and that the show can happen at night.
Mm-hmm.
And
it's a massive responsibility, isn't it, on both sides? But somehow I tend to see that the production manager, he's got so much on his plate, doesn't he?
Yeah.
Even more so than the tour manager sometimes, in many ways.
Yeah, there's definitely an overlap, and on the other hand, there's a lot of stuff that for instance, within Temptation, there's the tour manager and I. We have a pretty smooth working relationship, and there's a lot of the stuff he takes care of, I don't, and there's a lot of stuff that he doesn't have to bother about, that he doesn't even, he wouldn't even think of thinking about, actually. But with that it's he makes sure we get the set lists. So he talks to the band and makes sure we get the set lists in time. That's something I don't take care of. He does the stage drinks, for instance. Although I've been in situations where the production manager or sometimes even the backliners take care of the stage drinks. And he's the guy that at the end of the show is waiting at the side of the stage with the towels. Because I, as a production manager, the thing I'm going to take care of once the band gets off stage is that actually the gear gets off stage also.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the whole point. At the end of the night, the tour manager takes the band off stage, and the production manager takes the production off stage.
Right.
Although again, in some situations, the production manager brings the band down, and the tour manager isn't involved at all because there's maybe one or two security guys that takes the band down.
Mm-hmm.
But for instance, with Muse, you would always see at the end of the night, George Reeves, the production manager, he would be part of the party that walks the band out off stage. But it would actually be the security guys and the tour manager that would put them in the cars and make them move out.
Mm-hmm.
And then George would be just, he would go back and make sure that the production would load out.
And on this particular case, on Muse, or even within Temptation, does the tour manager leaves site with the band, or he just packs the band in the cars, make sure they're on their way to the hotel or wherever they're headed towards, and stay on site, or does he go along with them?
Normally, he would leave with the band.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Because so he may stay on site if the band is really, if there's more levels to it. If you go higher up, if you go to the level of the real big bands, then they may have some more management. There may be a travel party, family involved.
Mm-hmm.
There, the tour manager may or he may not travel with the band. If he stays on site, there's quite often there's not a lot of work for him to do anymore.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So mostly from what I've seen, with the band like Muse, or even within Temptation, the tour manager is with the band.
Mm-hmm.
However, as an example, within Temptation, yesterday we were on the festival in Switzerland, and Sharon, the singer, she had a ton of promo to do during the day. There was like 3-4 hours of work. And then we need an extra person, like a media person or a manager person, to take care of her, because the tour manager cannot be with her and not be with the rest of the band or with some of the show proceedings on site. So there, it's it can get a bit more complex than that. There, he wasn't with the lead singer, but he was still with the band, and he was still, he would still be available for her, and making sure that all her transportation to and from the hotel and from wherever she did this promo is being arranged, because that's the stuff that he arranges.
Right.
He's just not with her at that point.
Mm-hmm. Hayo, starting to slowly wrap up our conversation here. I want to be mindful of your time. Do you have or follow any morning routines or rituals, or try to, even when out on the road traveling?
Out on the road, I've been struggling with that because I know I need it, and I know it would help me in a lot of ways, but it's hard to pick up if the main focus you would have in a certain period is just get enough sleep. So my main it when I travel on a bus, it's pretty much setting my own pace. So I'll wake up, I'll get up. I usually shower in the morning, whereas a lot of my crew showers at night before getting on the bus. I try shower in the morning when I get off the bus, and then I usually slowly move into working mode. As much as I would like to go on a run, I haven't been in a situation where I had time for that. I will go on a run on a day off, though. But other than that, there's not a lot more I've been doing so far.
But do you eat breakfast? Do you drink coffee?
I start with coffee.
Mm-hmm.
That's especially being out on the road. My first cup of coffee is a Kickstarter. I eat breakfast. I eat little breakfast, and then I just move into the day.
Do you have a particular diet that you follow? Is that like certain types of food that you don't eat, or certain types of food that you eat regularly, or try at least to maintain regularly on your diet?
This June, I started being a vegetarian. And
so you cut meat completely, no fish, no beef, no pork, no chicken.
I'm taking steps.
Right.
So we were already. I mean, our home diet, and which I also maintained on the road, was eating as little meat. As little meat as possible is effectively being a vegetarian. But up to me deciding to be a vegetarian, we would eat meat 3 days a week already. I haven't been eating pork for many years, apart from whatever I couldn't avoid. But I finally decided to become a vegetarian. Up to that point, I've always been cautious to eat enough, especially vegetables. I'm a bit of a cheater also, I like sweet stuff, so I would, especially being on tour and having a bowl of sweets or chocolate or whatever, it's always hard to resist. Well, I'm getting better at it. But
if you don't mind me asking, what was the main, did you have a specific reason why you decided to go into a vegetarian diet?
I'm just convinced I can be healthier with it. It will make it's multiple reasons. The reason why I decided to finally cut meat altogether was because I couldn't see the advantages of eating meat at all anymore. The disturbing part has always been animal welfare for me. The way in the Western world we treat animals and we think of them as a consumption product more than as a living being finally hit me hard, so to speak. And then, then there's also, which was at the moment I decided it wasn't even the main reason, but the whole environmental thing only strengthened me in the idea that I don't want to eat meat anymore.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I'm totally with you. I switched as well myself a couple of years ago.
Mm-hmm.
I've been dabbling with veganism and vegetarianism, being a vegetarian for a while. Meat was always a big part of my life.
Yep.
I grew up like eating meat probably 7 days a week for many, many years.
Yeah, you're from Brazil, right?
Exactly, from the south, where the Brazilian barbecues originated from. So barbecue is a big part of our culture down there.
Yeah.
So for me to step away from it was quite... moving to England, I diminished my beef, my red meat consumption drastically. But
Hmm.
always, you go out to eat a burger and cooking chicken at home and things
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah.
But a couple of years ago, after watching this documentary on Netflix called What the Health, it just kind of like opened up my eyes to so many things. And then obviously I started to seek more information about it, just not to make a judgment or a life changing decision based on a documentary.
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
with the information that we have nowadays available, the more I was reading about it, the more I was seeing and hearing and then discussing with people. It became so obvious to me that
Yeah.
number one,
Yeah.
it's not sustainable the way that we consume animal produce, but
Exactly.
but it's and it's destroying the planet. It's the number one cause, arguably the number one cause of climate change, of the rising temperatures on the planet for many reasons, of which we're not going to get into it now, but it is the number one. And the fact that but that's one side of the story. But then the other side of the
Mhm.
story as well is we evolved as Homo sapiens and as human beings consuming meat because we had to hunt to feed our families.
Yes.
We were hunter gatherers, and that it's just part of nature. But however, nowadays it became such a commodity. We can order, like you just mentioned, like barbecues. We can order barbecues on our mobile phones nowadays,
Oh
and
yeah,
that
yeah,
you know.
and yeah, and the quality of the meat or of the product. It's not just meat, of course, that you buy in or that you're offered to buy in supermarkets, etc. Is pretty bad also,
Mhm.
and yeah, I think with meat it's worse than with some of the grown or with a lot of the grown stuff, which you may have more side on where it comes from, what its origin is. Um, Funnily enough, when our children grew up, one of the things we always learned them. We had this little mantra, which was McDonald's is no food. Because obviously they were being kids and being in school and being tempted and etc. They would, every now and then can we go to McDonald's? We would. I mean, I think we took them to McDonald's once or twice a year,
Mhm.
tops ever. Coming back from holiday, we would, we would maybe swing by McDonald's, and for me, it was always a disappointment. Every time I had McDonald's, it was disappointing. I think the only thing that was kind of satisfactory from McDonald's for me were the milkshakes. But other than that, it's so McDonald's was no food, and I think, my kids they by themselves, I think they've been to McDonald's more often, but still we kind of grew that awareness. And that's always been my awareness too. And
It's really funny because that's exactly the same approach that my parents had with me. They would probably take me to McDonald's, like, I mean, a handful of times on the course of a year, and
yeah,
and
yeah,
that was a great lesson. Even though they never judged or they never said anything, and I think they only just took me a few times because the nearest McDonald's from my hometown at the time. Nowadays we have more than one, but
yeah,
like 20 years ago it was just not there. So it was kind of a trek to go, a bit of a day family trip to go to a McDonald's,
yeah.
but it was a good thing, because definitely McDonald's is definitely not it's definitely I wouldn't put that into the food category, and unfortunately there's a lot
No,
of people
no,
in the
it
world
isn't.
that can only afford that kind of food, and
Yeah,
don't have the
yeah,
information about it as well. They don't know that they're consuming a lot of preservatives. They're consuming a lot of highly processed stuff. That it's something that, number one, our organism struggle to understand because there's so many chemicals and things that are just not natural. But then
true. Yeah,
just to wrap up the part of meat consumption, I've been basically through moments where I was like 100% a vegan, and then this during the last 2 years. But ultimately, I after going deep into this subject and being very interested, I understood, and I don't particularly believe in radicalism, but I believe in coherence and being, understanding what's happening and what are you doing and how you're doing. So basically nowadays, I mean, my diet is like at home. I basically just eat like it's 80% vegan, and maybe I'm gonna have eggs, every now and then.
Yeah.
And maybe sometime I'll buy, some fish. I'll have that at home.
Yeah.
But mostly, like my breakfast is completely vegan. Dinner normally is completely vegan. If I'm out, I'm not paranoid. Say, for example, somebody invites me to dinner in their house, and they don't know if I have any diet requirements, and they cooked something that contains meat, for instance.
Yeah.
I'm not the kind of guy that will say, "Ooh, I'm sorry, I don't touch that. I don't eat that." Because at the end of the day, I always say this to people, because to me it makes absolute sense. Some people will criticize and say that's hypocrisy. Some people do understand. Most people do understand. But my view of things are basically like this. If I go to the supermarket, if I'm inviting you to my house for dinner, if I'm going to a restaurant myself where I am in charge of my order, where I am in charge of where I'm putting my money, I try to, at the very least, 80% of the time, to make what I believe to be the right decision, the decision that contributes to the planet. But if I'm coming to your house, or if there's, for instance, I don't know, a hamburger left over on catering and I'm really hungry and that's going in the bin, I mean, what would I do? I'm not going to touch. I did not contribute. It's already there. Me eating that particular food at that particular time, not going to change anything in regards of the planet or in regards of animal welfare.
That's true, and especially, well, you touched that point of it would end up in the bin. It's some sort of it's a form of what you would call micro sustainability, because you're eating what's there, and you're not putting something, or you're not putting something away to eat something that's not there, but that would have to be prepared. And that's another thing that I totally agree on that, and I think we're pretty similar there. I don't, I'm not preaching people not to eat meat, and I do eat meat occasionally. I mean, I was in Romania for 2 weeks, and I can tell you, being a vegetarian in Romania is virtually impossible. And so I dealt with whatever was possible, and just try to stay healthy. And that's pretty much how I roll. And I haven't figured out the fish part yet, not really. But because I'm not, it's not a switch from one day to another. I decided, okay, becoming vegetarian, looking into this vegan menus, because I see a lot of interesting things, and I get inspired by looking at preparing food in a different way, and I hope that I can keep that up.
Do you cook at home? Do you cook at home, Hayo?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Not enough, but the next couple months I will be home more, and I will be do more my fair share of cooking.
And one quick question just jumped into my mind now. Again, you mentioned that back in the day, on your teens, you used to drink a lot. Do you still drink alcohol, or what's your relation to alcohol nowadays?
Well, my relationship with alcohol has always been a bit strange, although it would never look like that. But I've always been aware that there's a danger lingering in the background. Although ever since I had a serious alcohol problem when I was around 18 or 19, right after pretty much right after my father died, and I recovered from that, and I think also through a larger period of my life, I've been drinking maybe more alcohol than would be really good for you. It has gotten less and less, and actually when I started running again, or when I started doing sports again, that brought down the alcohol consumption considerably. So right now it's at a level where it's okay. It's the same, or I've been considering stopping drinking altogether. I haven't gotten to that point yet, and I don't really see the point why I would get there, apart from the fact that it would be just healthy. On the other hand, the amount of alcohol I drink right now is pretty, it's pretty normal. I would say it's not harmful.
What's your favorite tipple? Do you like what do you when you want to have a drink? What do you like drinking?
Well, it depends on the situation. I like a good beer. I like nice craft beer.
Mm-hmm.
I like to taste what. It's the same as with food. I like to taste what people make that put love into what they do.
Mm-hmm.
So if you find, and that's something that I come across when touring a bit, you get to a place and there's a microbrewery or whatever, and they make really nice beer. Well, I like to taste that, and I maybe like to talk about it also. Same with wine, beer, wine. I'm not really a beer or a wine guy. There's not a lot of hard liquor, although I do like some booze every now and then, but not very often.
Nice. Hi, my friend. I have just a few roller coaster questions with short answers to finally come to the end of our podcast. So the first one would be, what do you do to unwind? What's the perfect lazy day on your books?
I unwind pretty drastically by just doing nothing. At this point, for several reasons, we decided not to go on holiday, even though we would have a little time for it. But I really enjoy just being at home and basically read a bit of newspaper. I have my breakfast. I have my coffee. I can sit down. I sit down, or rather lie down on my lounge set in the garden, and just I may even sleep some during the day, and just hang.
Good.
Walk into town, get another coffee, walk back home, and that's it. Just do some reading. And at the same time, think about things. So that's the drastic unwinding part.
Cool. What are some of the subjects you enjoy exploring outside of the ones we've already talked?
Well, that's coming in the unwinding part, but it's not really in there. It's different again. From running, there was out of the running there was a development also, because I'm not only a runner, I'm also a running trainer. So I do train a group of long distance runners once or twice a week, and that has become a very inspirational and very nice thing to do next to work.
Mm-hmm. That's an interesting one. I had no idea about that.
No, that's a new. When we came up with or when you proposed to do a podcast with me, I thought about that. That would have to be a subject, but it only comes up now. Being a runner trainer gives me an opportunity to learn again in fields where I haven't been. It gives me the opportunity to think about how you would work, how to handle different processes, but also there's a psychological side to it, because not only do I train a group, but I also support individual runners with their individual goals. And it's, apart from that, it's just being a trainer. Not only it's pretty it's not stressful, but it's tiring every since. But it gives a lot of energy too.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Hi, my friend. That's excellent. Thank you so very much for your time. This conversation was really good. I have a feeling we could definitely carry on, especially now that we tapped into your running, your coaching career in
oh
running.
Yeah, we can do another one.
We can definitely do another one. Perhaps the next one we can do it in person and with a good craft beer in hand. How about that?
Yeah, I actually thought about coming to London sometime, just to, you know.
Well, let me know if you
to hang.
Yeah, absolutely.
Do some running together.
Definitely, absolutely. If you come to London, let me know in advance when you're planning to come, and I can definitely take you for some nice runs here, and we can most certainly indulge on several different great craft beer bars, because we have plenty of that here.
I know. Let's see if I can, you know, if I can pick some dates for that sometime soon.
Perfect.
I'll think about it.
Amazing, Hayo. Thank you so very much, and I'll speak to you soon, my friend.
Thank you, Carl. Have a good one, and I'll talk to you soon.
I hope you guys enjoyed this conversation, this podcast, as much as I did doing it. So, if that's the case, please do follow on Instagram at rollercoastercarl, myself at Carl Casagrande, on Twitter, same thing, Facebook, same thing. Do subscribe on iTunes, subscribe on Spotify. That's very, very much appreciated. Thank you, and have a great day. Cheers. Bye-bye.